morning, everybody. Sorry about that. I'm about 2 minutes late. I was just about to go live, and one of the articles that I had pulled up started playing audio. Sitting here playing whack-a-mole with tabs. All right. So, real quick, before we get started on judicial overreach and the near psychopathy of these various judges jumping in the way that they are, I see Scrimshaw Rose says, Chris, don't know how to get this to you to take a look at it. Scrimshaw, you can send it to me. You can always send me something at the show, all one word, the show, at brushfiremind.com. And I'll be happy to take a look and see if it's something we need to talk about on air or what you're looking at there. So y'all let me know what you see there. And like I said, send your submissions into the show at brushfiremind.com. Just a heads up, guys. For some reason I'm not. Ow, damn. I'm not seeing the live chat pop up over here this morning. So let me pull that for Rumble. There we go. And y'all, if you're watching on something other than Rumble right now, I want y'all to do me a favor. Hop over to Rumble. If you're watching, wherever you're watching, Facebook, X, YouTube, Twitch, any of those places, hop over to Rumble real quick. It'll look just like that. You see, that's this morning's show. And you scroll down to the description. You can do the Buy Me a Coffee link, but what I'm really looking for you to do, I want you to hit that join us on Rumble. If you're not already on Rumble, click on the link right there, and that'll take you through. It's not going to do the right thing for me because I'm signed in. If you're not already signed in, that'll take you through getting signed up for Rumble. A Rumble account is free. Once you've got your free Rumble account and you leave a message, say something in the live chat, I'll be able to. You'll become eligible when we start giving away free memberships, as we often do. So, what are we talking about this morning? We've got recent footage. Sergeant Major says put up the link for Amazon. I'd have to pick a product, old man. We'll talk about that another time. So recently we've talked about this before, that Judge Dugan helping a hostile foreign invader to escape justice, right? I mean, just straight up aiding and abetting a fugitive from justice and helping him get out. Now, we've discussed it, and the story that we had originally was that there were ICE agents outside the courtroom, and because there were ICE agents outside the courtroom, the judge dismissed all charges against this hostile foreign invader who had been arrested and charged with aggravated assault and battery. So basically she helped him escape. Well, there's new footage now that we have. Is this? It's not. Okay, yeah, here it is. So we have new footage that shows the sequence of events leading up to that evasion. So it appears that she basically went into the hallway where the ICE agents were plainclothes ICE agents waiting outside of Hannah Dugan's courtroom to arrest the foreign invader. And she went out and instructed them to go and speak to another judge, a supervisory judge. And it looks very much, she approached several of them and sent them away. Didn't realize there were others in the hallway, other plainclothes agents in the hallway who stayed behind and waited. And then she personally escorted the criminal out of the hallway. Let me look real quick and see if I can find that. Oh yeah, this one's Flores Ruiz. I keep wanting to mention Abrego Garcia in this case, because it's just the name that's top of mind in these cases. But this is not the Abrego Garcia case. I don't know about you guys. It's hard to keep up with we've got so many of these hostile foreign invaders that are in our country raping and murdering our young daughters and loved ones, but it's hard to remember all their names. You know what I mean? But this is the Flores Ruiz. So she led the federal agents away and then went back into the courtroom, dismissed the charges against Flores Ruiz, who, like I said, he was not there because he had been arrested for being an illegal alien. There were federal agents there to arrest him as an illegal alien and deport him. But he was there because he had been charged separately for assault and battery. And this was a pretty Loctite case. It was very obvious he was arrested in the act of just absolutely beating the shit out of somebody. And this judge, because she got to resist Trump, resist, right? She dismissed the criminal charges and then escorted him out of the courthouse, right? And through a back door, through her chambers, through a back door, and out into a back alley. She took every step that she could easily take to avoid the law enforcement that was there to arrest him for a serious crime. When we say serious crime, felony assault and battery, aggravated assault, etc., these are serious crimes. They are. I don't mean to trivialize those, but when we're talking about the crime of crossing the border illegally, and I've explained the difference before, because you'll hear that, oh, well, unlawful presence in the country isn't a crime, it's a civil violation. You'll hear that all the time, alongside these people that like to say, no person is illegal, persons can't be illegal. You're right. You're absolutely right. No person is illegal. It is not illegal to be a person. Things that are illegal are those actions which are forbidden, prohibited by law. We do not live in a legal system that is prescriptive, right? When somebody says that if I want to do X, that's legal, I'm allowed to do X. Let me clarify something for you. There is nowhere a list of things that you are allowed to do. The law is a list of things that you are not allowed to do. And because of the way the Constitution is written, by and large, many of those laws strain the bounds of credulity and the extents of the Constitution. There are a lot of laws which prohibit you from taking particular actions, which should frankly not exist. A good example of that is all the laws against the use of illicit narcotics, et cetera, substance use, things of that nature. And I'm not about to make an argument for, I'm not about to argue that we should legalize all the drugs, but the point being that the Constitution does not carve out an authority or enumerate an authority to the government that it has the authority to illegalize drugs. That doesn't exist in the Constitution. And so those laws are anathema to the Constitution, just like any law against free speech or any law against the right to keep and bear arms. The Constitution is very clear on that. The entire body of law, with one exception, is a charter of negative assertions against those actions which have been forbidden you through some sort of social consensus. Right? In theory, the law is, we all got together and said, hey, don't murder people. We don't like that. And so if you do that, then we'll murder you right back. So don't do that. So understand that means that if it is not forbidden, it is permitted. All things are permissible which are not forbidden. And, that we can go down a whole rabbit hole about taboos and shame culture that are very important. Cameron and I had a very long conversation yesterday about the importance of kink shaming. That might have to be its whole a whole show on itself that I don't want to get into right now, but just kind of there is that social pressure, that's that power of the social pressure to prevent unwanted activities. But when we're talking about something like the hostile foreign invaders, you'll hear all the time, a person is not illegal. That's correct. That is true. A person is not illegal. So calling them an illegal immigrant, an illegal alien, that's not entirely correct. The correct term is criminal. Actions are prohibited by the law. Actions are forbidden, right? The conduct of prohibited activity is called crime. Law School 101, crime is harm. If there's no victim, there's no crime. When you're talking about crossing an international sovereign border, that is a war crime. That is an act of war. So when I say hostile foreign invaders, what I mean is the rogue agents of a hostile foreign nation. And make no mistake, Mexico, being a cartel government, is a state which is hostile to the United States of America. That's without getting into places like Venezuela and the like, who have literally emptied their prisons of violent criminals and sent them to attack our borders and cross illegal into the country. When you hear people talk about, unlawful presence is a civil matter, it's not a criminal matter, that is correct. Being in the United States unlawfully is a civil matter. If you overstayed a visa, you came in on a work visa, a student visa, a tourist visa, your visa expired and you stuck around, that's a civil matter, not a criminal matter. Okay, cool. Crossing the border, however, is, in fact, crossing the border illegally without going through a port of entry is a crime. And so don't let them confuse you with that nonsense. A person who illegally crossed the border is a criminal under the law. That is the law. That's not an opinion and an analytical interpretation. That's black and white. Crossing the border without going through a port of entry is a prohibited activity. And so they're right. These people are not illegal. They are criminals. Right? So it's not illegal for them to exist. It's illegal for them to persist in presence in this country, having committed the crime. So we're talking about this morning because we got the extra footage. We now have a better idea of just how far out of her way Judge Dugan went to Judge Hannah Dugan, just how far out of her way she went to commit the crime that she obviously committed. You'll note I'm not saying allegedly, right? Sure, she can have her day in court, guilty until proven innocent. We've seen the video. We've watched what happened. There is no intelligent doubt as to what she has done. And frankly, after the way the Kenosha Kid and Derek Chauvin were treated, I am just not interested in the idea of media impartiality. We watched this bitch do it. She took a violent criminal, forgave him the violent crime of which he was obviously guilty and very likely about to be convicted for. Dad says we didn't see anything about what she did. The video that they showed me there, it just seemed to play on a loop, didn't it? I tell you what, bear with me just a second. Let me see if I can find a better version of that video. Here we go. All right. So here's a good version of the video, and it's even narrated for us.
He meets his attorney in the hallway and walks towards Circuit Court Judge Hannah Dugan's courtroom. Along the way, he passes plainclothes federal agents who are sitting on a bench. They are there to detain him. After Flores Ruiz walks by, the agents turn to each other and appear to confirm his identity amongst themselves. But a few moments later, Judge Dugan and another judge approach the agents sitting on the bench. A criminal complaint against Dugan later said she was alerted to their presence by a court official. That complaint says during this interaction, Dugan and the agents disagreed over the type of warrant they had to arrest Flores Ruiz. According to the complaint, Dugan ordered the agents to go to the chief judge's office. Video shows her pointing them through a double door. She then turns back to speak with other agents further down the hall and orders them through the doors as well. Shortly after that, with the agents gone from the hallway, Eduardo Flores Ruiz and his attorney exit into the hallway through a different door. As they walk down the hall toward the elevators, they pass another plainclothes federal agent. Neither they nor Judge Dugan seem to have known the elevators. His attorney.
I want you guys to watch this chick right here as they're walking down the hall. She does the guilty thing where she's looking around. She looks like she knows she's guilty.
Exit into the hallway through a different door. As they walk down the hall toward the elevators, they pass another plainclothes.
See, she's doing the classic lookout behavior, like, okay, looking around. Okay, come on. Right. And now, to be clear, that's that woman right there. That's not Judge Dugan. That's one of her, apparently one of her judicial assistants, one of her, court assistants. Dugan's wrapping other people up in the conspiratorial activity of evading police, obstructing justice. Y'all bear with me just a half a second. Paul, are you having a hard time figuring out how to leave a comment in the chat?
It will not let me leave a comment. It says I need to verify my email to.
Okay.
We'll figure it out. I want it.
No worries.
Technology.
So, yeah.
Federal agent, neither they nor Judge Dugan seem to have noticed at the time.
So there you go. There's the plainclothes agent that Dugan missed when she was sending them away.
To follow Flores Ruiz. Security video shows Flores Ruiz exiting through a basement exit. Upstairs on the 6th floor, the other agents have left the chief judge's office and worked their way downstairs. Flores Ruiz left the building onto 9th Street. Videos of the street shows the agents catching up to him. Flores Ruiz runs across 10th Street while trying to get away, but the agents catch him and arrest him.
So, yeah, like I said, she's basically dead to rights because there's tracking video all the way out the door from the moment that Dugan walks out and tells the federal agents that they need to go somewhere else, sends them away, misses a few of them, and then walks Flores Ruiz out and hands him off to the assistant, who then escorts him down through the basement and out the back to sneak him out. So now it is the case that she has been indicted for this crime. And here's where it gets interesting. So a judge has been appointed to the case. Federal judge with history of anti-Trump remarks assigned to Hannah Dugan criminal case. Now, I'm sure you guys, many of you watch the show routinely, and I know that's part of how people get to the show anyway, is that you follow politics, or at least have passing interest in the news. So I'm sure that many of you will remember that all throughout the last couple of years, we talked about the rampant lawfare against Donald Trump, with all these activist judges working to resist the Trump administration, resist the Trump agenda, et cetera, et cetera. And when we say that, one of the things that is especially suspicious, and I promise I'm about to relate this back to this current case, one of the things that's especially suspicious is in every single one of these illicit cases against Donald Trump, there was a judge that was antagonistic to Trump, who was vocally against the Trump, right? In every one of them, especially the cases in New York. And there were even some cases that were overseen by the same corrupt, obviously anti-Trump judge. The reason that this is especially suspicious is because the judges are supposed to be assigned to the cases randomly. Now, if it is the case that random assignment just happened to select the most anti-Trump, most biased, corrupt judges available, then that tells us, if it was truly a random sampling, then that tells us that corruption is so endemic that essentially the whole thing needs to be torn down. The alternative possibility is that there's some corruption within the selection process that is sidestepping the mystical dice roll of RNGesus. The random number generator just isn't random number generating the way it's supposed to. Now, there is, I'll grant, a very slim, an infinite number of monkeys on an infinite number of typewriters will eventually produce Shakespeare. Okay, there is a slim chance in an infinite universe that the dice just didn't roll for the Donald. But that chance is so slim that it beggars credulity. It just does not add up. Those numbers don't work. Right. So in the Trump cases, we saw, here's a summary. This article is from Yakovlepeblum. That's anyway. But the summary: the balance of power among the three branches of government is the cornerstone of the United States Constitution. However, activist judges have increasingly encroached upon executive authority, undermining the separation of powers. When judges exceed their constitutional authority by obstructing or overturning executive actions without legitimate constitutional grounds, they not only overstep their role, but may also commit acts tantamount to treason and sedition. I would say treason and sedition are a little bit of a stretch. It's complex, so this is tricky. I want you guys to be careful when you use the word treason, okay? Because you have to understand it correctly. We've heard over and over again, Obama committed treason, Biden committed treason, Trump committed treason, Hillary committed treason. Okay, hold up. Obama committed treason because the thing he did with Obamacare was in stark contrast to the interest of the American people. Hold up. That's not treason. That's maladministration. That's basically he was bad at the job he was elected for. That's not the same thing as treason. Treason is when you are actively engaged in providing aid and comfort to the enemies of the United States of America. Now, here's where that gets a little foggy. There is a good argument to be made that currently within the United States government there is an entrenched opposition to the will of the people. Right? Never forget this. All those resist Trump people. I don't care what you think about Donald Trump personally. When you hear somebody talk about resisting Trump from within the government, taking administrative actions, legislative actions, judicial actions to resist the President of the United States of America, wherever you might live, and you might be surrounded by people who just hate Donald Trump, hate Republicans, hate white people, whatever. Here's the thing I want you to remember, okay? The President of the United States of America is the one and only, the sole elected position in these United States who is voted for by the entire country. Right? You may be from a hard right or a hard left area, and you get that, super conservative or super liberal senator, congressman, etc. Well, that's because only your immediate neighbors are voting in that election with you. And so it seems like you have consensus there. But the president is the only one who is voted for by the entire country. That's why that right there is why the shenanigans of the 2020 election are so important, so significant, and so dangerous. Because we know from the court records that there is so much corruption and voter fraud in every election. And I do mean every election. I don't mean every general election for president. I mean every election that happens in this country. If you've got a population of more than about 1,000 people in a town, there's a high degree of probability that there's some kind of shady shit going on there. There's so much voter fraud that we know about. And I don't mean we as in the tinfoil hat. What I mean that the courts know about, that the law enforcement apparatus can prove. There's so much of that they cannot prosecute all of it. And so they choose to prosecute none of it because it bogs down the books. Right? And the general theory of operation in the government is that, if the dog catcher stuffs the ballot, it really doesn't matter all that much. Well, it sure as hell matters if he steals his first election and uses that to build a career of stolen elections. So maybe pay attention to that one too. But in fairness, we simply do not have a sufficiently robust judicial apparatus to prosecute, to indict, prosecute, convict, charge, and punish everybody who votes illegally. There's just too much of it. But then we get around to the judiciary. When you see people resisting the president, they are resisting the will of the entire body politic of these United States of America. They're not just disagreeing with their local politician, right? They are resisting the entire country, popular vote, etc. That's a big deal. So there's a good argument to be made that there is, in fact, a coalition within the United States federal government that is engaged in this activity to a degree that falls under the law as it purports to conspiracy to defraud the United States. Let me make the case for that. More than half of all universal injunctions in U.S. history have been filed against Donald Trump. A universal injunction is when a lower court judge issues an injunction that essentially says, this is the new law. Right? So what happens is, in a good example with the Trump cases, you have one hostile foreign invader who's looking at deportation, and he gets his hands on an ACLU or SPLC immigration lawyer who goes in and demands a continuance or demands a stay of deportation based on some nebulous presence of a threat in the foreign country. And the judge says, oh yeah, you can't deport this guy, because if you deport this guy back to his home country, he's going to be killed by the cocaine gang. And that means that you can't deport anybody. That's when it becomes a universal injunction. Because you can't deport this guy, you can't deport anybody. The Constitution is very clear on this. From the lowest probate court judge all the way up to the Supreme Court, the judges may only find in a case that is put before them. They can only find in the matter of controversy before the bench. Right? That means if I sue 3M because I'm deaf and they gave me bad earplugs, then that does not translate to everybody else getting a check from 3M. That's the difference between a lawsuit and a class action lawsuit. And even in a class action, you have to be a member of the class, right? People who got blown up by their airbags, people who went deaf over their earplugs, people who, drank the water in Flint, Michigan. You have to be a part of the class in order for the judge's decision to affect you, positively or negatively. Right? And what these judges have done with these several universal injunctions, more than half of all the universal injunctions ever issued, is blatantly unconstitutional. They do not have the authority under any circumstance whatsoever. And I do mean whatsoever. I'll address, Scrimshaw mentioned Marbury versus Madison. In the Constitution, under any circumstance whatsoever, to issue a ruling which has a broad sweeping effect over the entire nation. That said, the Supreme Court does overturn laws based on the constitutionality of those laws. But, let's not forget, that is so clearly not an authority afforded to the Supreme Court under the Constitution that it was created by precedents through the findings in Marbury versus Madison, where basically Marbury was suing Madison over having his sheriff's credentials issued after Madison's election. Right, we're talking about an almost 200-year-old case that established the first precedents of judicial review. But judicial review, the authority of the Supreme Court to decide on the constitutionality of a law and either uphold it or strike it down, that is not an authority afforded to the court by the Constitution. It is an authority that they usurped through the precedent set in Marbury versus Madison. So now we come to the Judge Hannah Dugan, federal judge with history of anti-Trump remarks. I know that's a lot of setup, but I wanted to make it clear that there is a long-running thread of obvious crookedness where corrupt, biased judges are taking illegal actions for the purposes of resisting the will of the people through the administration of Donald Trump, who is currently the only elected official who was elected by the entire body politic. Federal judge with history of anti-Trump remarks assigned to Hannah Dugan criminal case. The Milwaukee judge accused of helping an illegal immigrant evade immigration and customs enforcement is back in the spotlight, this time because of the liberal federal judge presiding over her trial. U.S. District Judge Lynn Adelman, 85 years old, was randomly, I'm sure, randomly assigned to preside over the jury trial of Milwaukee County Circuit Judge Hannah Dugan, who was indicted earlier this month allegedly, I showed you the video. But for allegedly shielding an illegal immigrant from ICE in her courtroom. Adelman, a former Democrat lawmaker, right? Oh yeah, that's right. He was a congressman, a Democrat. Or I'm sorry, not a congressman. He was state senate. Wisconsin state senate. Democrat state senator. But, this guy has run as a Democrat and spent 20 years as a Democrat in the Wisconsin state senate before then President Bill Clinton. And, not just a Democrat, but a Clinton appointee. And, oh, no, there's no bad blood between Clinton and Trump. No. Actually, I'm sure if you asked Clinton what he thought about the 2016 election, he'd say, "Oh, I think it was kind of funny. I mean, I beat that bitch too." Don't forget your sunglasses, honey. Though the judge hasn't been active in politics for years, bullshit. Critics note recent rulings and writings in which he's taken aim at President Donald Trump. How do we even get that sentence? How does this sentence even make sense to anybody? Right? Though the judge hasn't been active in politics for years, critics note recent rulings and writings in which he takes aim at Donald Trump, Chief Justice Roberts, and others. Oh, right there in the sentence. He hasn't been active in politics for years. Oh, but except that he keeps writing all these articles against Donald Trump. Like, for example, okay, this article is not by Judge Adelman. So I've got this last article that I want to share. I want to put Adelman in perspective for you. The Death of Irony, How a Judge's Attack on Judicial Bias Backfired. And this article is by, where's the guy's name? Hang on, let me double check this, make sure I don't get that wrong. Okay, this is an article by Jonathan Turley. So Turley, and the article is a little. Let's get into it. Below is my column in the Hill newspaper on the recent criticism of the Roberts Court by a federal district judge. The law review article makes a strong case for critics who view some judges as part of a deep bench movement against Trump. And Turley says, I do not see that pattern, but I do view Judge Lynn Adelman as well outside of the navigational beacons for public commentary by federal judges. This is what makes the article interesting, actually, is Turley says he does not see the pattern of deep bench movement against Donald Trump, which brings him under suspicion. Basically, Turley has just admitted that he's not paying close attention or understanding what's happening. I just laid it out for you. I mean, but between the lawfare and the unprecedented saturation of universal injunctions, to deny that there's evidence of a deep bench movement against Trump is just, I mean, ludicrous. I mean, how do you ignore the evidence of your own eyes, right? In a controversial law review article, District Court Judge Lynn Adelman denounced what he sees as raw ideological bias of the Supreme Court. Unfortunately, Adelman makes a better case of bias against himself than he does Chief Justice Roberts. He unloads on Roberts as essentially a dishonest partisan hack, which is funny because, let me tell you something, Roberts is in fact a dishonest partisan hack. And it's hilarious that this activist left-wing judge and I actually agree on that, but we agree on it for different reasons. One of the first and most principal places that we saw Roberts absolutely just take the law into his own hands and ruin us was in the findings on the Obamacare cases, where he continued to instruct the administration's counsel on when to refer to the charge as either a penalty or a tax. Because throughout the whole litigation over Obamacare and the quandary of it being an affirmative action requirement where you must do a thing or we will punish you for it, no caveats, right? Real quick summary. There are other laws in this country where you are required to take an action. However, without exception, they are all contingent on your interest in taking another action. You have to get a license to drive. You have to carry car insurance if you want to drive on a public road. If you do not want to drive a car, you do not have to get a driver's license. right? So all other laws where there's an action that you have to take, your taking that action is part of your wanting to do another thing. Now, there's a whole other argument about licensure that's completely separate, but the point being, no law simply says you will do X or you will be punished. The closest we ever get to that is, if you want to do Y, you must also do X. Except for Obamacare, which tried to tell us that you must purchase health insurance or you will be punished. You do not have the choice. You cannot choose to save money and be cautious. You cannot choose to opt out of that system. It's the only place we have that. And Roberts screwed us on that by instructing in court the counsel on when to refer to the charge as a penalty and when to refer to it as a tax. Because both gave us serious problems with legal scrutiny over deciding the individual mandate for Obamacare. The individual mandate is clearly unlawful, unconstitutional. The court has since found as much and removed the individual mandate, but Roberts worked his ass off as the Supreme Court justice, the Chief Justice. He worked his ass off to keep Obamacare alive despite its clear unconstitutionality and illegality. And that was before it even came to, then you get to Obergefell, right? The Obergefell case was another one that really put a nail in the coffin of the idea of justice as a competent, impartial jurist. He is an activist. In the Obergefell case, the question before the court was the question of whether or not same-sex couples could engage in holy matrimony. And the court got it wrong. I've long said that for my taste, if two dudes want to get married and do their thing, in private, that's their business. I don't care. And the Constitution says likewise. The 10th Amendment says all those things which are not enumerated and ceded to the authority of the United States federal government are retained and reserved to the governments of the states and the smaller cities and municipalities and the people, right? So if the federal government is not named in the Constitution as having been explicitly ceded a particular authority explicitly, then it does not have that authority. Therefore, all laws related to marriage are null and void, right? Instead of Roberts saying in the Obergefell case, hey, the Constitution doesn't say anything about marriage, so the federal government has no business having an opinion on marriage. Therefore, all the laws against gay marriage are stricken down. That's what he could have done. And that would have been constitutionally defensible and reasonable. Instead, what he did was he said, the Constitution protects the right of same-sex couples to get married, and therefore, law enforcement should be instructed to force religious institutions to perform ceremonies for these marriages, even if the religion is against same-sex marriage generally. So rather than come up with a reasonable constitutional finding, he went out of his way to add to the law an activity explicitly forbidden, right? You are the judicial branch. You are not the legislative branch. You do not legislate from the bench, right? So that criticism, that is the honest, legitimate criticism of Justice Roberts. The criticism that Lynn Adelman has for him is essentially amounts to he doesn't do enough judicial activism. In a controversial law review, Adelman makes a better case of his bias, calling Roberts as essentially a dishonest partisan hack. He declares the pledge by Roberts to call the balls and strikes a masterpiece of disingenuousness, which again, I actually agree with that statement, because like I just laid out, Roberts has been just a train wreck, right? But he attacks the 5 conservative justices as the hard right majority that has now been actively participating in undermining American democracy. That's one of those STFU moments. Let me clear something up there too. Between Amy Coney Barrett and Justice Roberts, the idea that we have a hard right majority on the Supreme Court today is laughably absurd. I mean, Roberts is a total turncoat, and Amy Coney Barrett is just completely cowed. Right? She continuously sides with the other women on the Supreme Court on feelings alone, in complete ignorance and evasion of the law and the Constitution. And it really does come down to, she's a woman who has seen the writing on the wall, and the writing on the wall is, if you oppose the Democrats, they'll burn your city down and murder your children. And that might sound a little harsh, but if for somebody who wants to say that conservatives are violent, they can go and grab some video from the back side of the building at January 6th, where you see a bunch of Antifa doing a bunch of nonsense and trying to create this image of a violent riot. You never get to see, they don't show you the video from the other side of the building where the MAGA protesters were waving signs and saying "Stop the Steal." Right? They try not to show you the video where the guys were actually wearing MAGA hats inside the building or walking between the velvet ropes going on a tour. But if you take a moment and Google riots, no, don't specify, right? Don't specify. Just go and search for videos of riots. Don't tell them what wing you're interested in, what, left or right. You're going to see Berkeley riots. You're going to see LA riots. You're going to see Summer of Love BLM riots. You're going to see autonomous zones. You're going to see the pro-Palestine riots. You're going to see the pro-Kamala voter running up and shooting a guy in a MAGA hat in the side of the head and screaming, "I got one, I got one, I got a MAGA rat." That's what comes, because one political party does riots and the other political party has jobs. You don't see conservatives out there burning down cities and buildings because we got shit to do. We're busy. Right? Okay. I am coming up on needing to put a pin in this one. I'd like to go a little deeper into this conversation about Adelman. Maybe if Mario drag his ass out of bed sometime soon, we can come back and cover that a little bit more thoroughly. But I do see that we had a few viewers drop off, but we broke 40. So I'm going to give away one subscription this morning, and we'll hang out for a minute and see who gets it. Liberty Girl got it. Yeah, screw it. Let's give away another one. So Liberty Girl, you can take that subscription and go back and watch the deep dives that we did on MK Ultra, on the JFK files, on, damn it, that one went to Sergeant Major. He's already a member. Okay, I'm gonna give away one more random one. See if I can't catch. I'm hoping to get one to Bork. Boom! Victory. Okay, perfect. Gotcha. All right. And with that, I actually have to get down to Dublin, so I'm going to have to go ahead and pop off of here. Guys, thanks for watching this morning. We appreciate you. We appreciate you watching. We love you, and we will see you tomorrow. One more. There it is.